Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Leonardo smoothed down the unfamiliar fabric of the blouse, its soft material a stark contrast to his usual t-shirts and hoodies. The skirt swished around his knees.
"You can do this,"
he whispered to his reflection, trying to muster courage he didn't quite feel. The face staring back at him was a mixture of determination and abject terror. The commute to work felt like an eternity. Every glance from fellow passengers on the subway seemed to bore into him, though rationally he knew most people were too engrossed in their phones or newspapers to pay him much attention. Still, his palms grew clammy, and he found himself obsessively checking and rechecking that nothing was out of place. As the elevator dinged open on his floor, Leonardo took a deep breath. The familiar sights and sounds of the office washed over him. The hum of computers, the distant chatter of coworkers, the unmistakable aroma of cheap coffee. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then, reality crashed back in as he caught sight of his reflection in a glass partition. The blouse. The skirt. This was happening. This was real. Leonardo made a beeline for his desk, keeping his head down and praying he wouldn't bump into anyone. He slid into his chair, booted up his computer, and tried to lose himself in work. Maybe if he just focused hard enough, the day would fly by without incident. No such luck. "All hands meeting in 5 minutes, people!" The booming voice of his boss, Mr. Thornton, echoed across the open-plan office. "Conference room B, let's go!" Leonardo's stomach dropped. An all-hands meeting? Today of all days? He briefly considered faking sudden illness, but knew that would only delay the inevitable. With legs that felt like lead, he stood and made his way to the conference room. The walk seemed to stretch on for miles. He could feel eyes on him, hear the hushed whispers. Or was that just his paranoia? By the time he reached the doorway, his heart was threatening to burst out of his chest. He hesitated for a split second before stepping inside. The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to stare at him. Some widened in surprise, others narrowed in confusion. A few people exchanged meaningful glances. Leonardo felt his face burning, certain he was turning as red as a tomato.
"Well, don't just stand there blocking the door."
Mr. Thornton's gruff voice broke the silence.
"Take a seat. We haven't got all day."
Leonardo scurried to an empty chair, keeping his eyes fixed firmly on the floor. He could still feel the weight of his colleagues' gazes, hear the barely concealed murmurs. His mind raced, imagining all the cruel things they must be thinking. "Before we start," a familiar voice piped up, "I just wanted to say, Leonardo, that outfit is absolutely killer. Where did you get that blouse?" It was Catherine from accounting. Leonardo's head snapped up in surprise, meeting her warm smile. There was no mockery in her eyes, just genuine admiration. "Oh, thanks," he managed to stammer out. "It's from that new boutique downtown." Catherine nodded approvingly. "Well, it suits you. I might have to check that place out myself." Just like that, the tension in the room dissipated. People turned their attention back to Mr. Thornton as he cleared his throat to begin the meeting. Leonardo felt a wave of relief wash over him, so powerful he nearly became lightheaded. As Mr. Thornton droned on about quarterly projections and upcoming deadlines, Leonardo found his anxiety slowly ebbing away. He dared to glance around the room, realizing that most of his coworkers were far more interested in their phones or doodling in their notepads than they were in his clothing choices. The meeting dragged on, as meetings tend to do. Leonardo found himself relaxing incrementally with each passing minute. By the time Mr. Thornton was wrapping up his long-winded speech about synergy and teamwork, Leonardo was even able to contribute a few ideas to the discussion. As people began filing out of the conference room, a few of his closer work friends approached him. "Hey, Leo," his cubicle neighbor, Mark, said casually. "You still up for grabbing lunch later? That new Thai place opened up down the street." "Oh, yeah," Leonardo replied, momentarily thrown by the normalcy of the interaction. "That sounds great." "Cool. I'll swing by your desk around noon," Mark said, with a nod, before heading back to his workspace. Leonardo lingered in the conference room, letting the realization sink in. No one cared. Well, that wasn't entirely true. Catherine had complimented him, which was nice. But beyond that, people were far more concerned with their own lives, their own work, their own problems. His choice of clothing was barely a blip on their radar. As he made his way back to his desk, Leonardo felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The anxiety that had been his constant companion since he'd first decided to wear this outfit began to fade away, replaced by a tentative sense of liberation. He settled back into his chair, fingers flying across the keyboard as he threw himself into his work with renewed energy. For the first time that day, he allowed himself a small smile. Maybe, just maybe, this could become his new normal. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of emails, spreadsheets, and conference calls. Leonardo found himself so engrossed in a particularly tricky piece of code that he almost missed Mark tapping him on the shoulder for their lunch plans. "Earth to Leo," Mark chuckled. "You ready to grab some food? I'm starving." Leonardo blinked, coming back to reality. "Oh, right. Yeah, let me just save this real quick." As they walked to the elevator, Leonardo braced himself for comments or questions about his outfit, but Mark just launched into a story about his weekend fishing trip, complete with wild hand gestures as he described the one that got away. The Thai restaurant was bustling with the lunch crowd when they arrived. As they waited to be seated, Leonardo caught sight of their reflection in a decorative mirror. There he was, in his blouse and skirt, standing next to Mark in his typical button-down and slacks. And yet, the world hadn't ended. No one was pointing and staring. They were just two co-workers grabbing lunch, like any other day. "Table for two?" the hostess asked, grabbing menus.
"Yes, please,"
Leonardo replied, surprising himself with the steadiness in his voice. As they settled into their seats and perused the menu, Mark finally broached the subject Leonardo had been both dreading and expecting. "So," he said casually, not looking up from his menu. "New look, huh?" Leonardo tensed, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Yeah," he said cautiously. I thought I'd try something different." Mark nodded, still focused on deciding between pad thai and green curry. "Cool. Hey, do you think the spice levels here are accurate? I don't want to melt my face off if I order the Thai hot." And just like that, the subject was dropped. They spent the rest of lunch debating the merits of various curry dishes and laughing about office gossip. Not once did Mark make Leonardo feel uncomfortable or out of place. As they walked back to the office, Leonardo felt a surge of gratitude towards his friend. He cleared his throat, feeling the need to say something. "Hey, Mark. Thanks for, being cool about everything." Mark raised an eyebrow. "About what? Lunch? I mean, you did kind of hog all the spring rolls, but I'll forgive you this time." Leonardo couldn't help but laugh, No, I mean, about this. He gestured to his outfit. Mark's expression softened. Leo, you're my friend, and a damn good programmer. What you wear doesn't change either of those things. Though I gotta say, if you're gonna keep dressing like that, you might need to give me some fashion tips. My wife's always saying I dress like a schlub. They shared a chuckle as they re-entered the office building. As they rode the elevator back up to their floor, Leonardo felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the spicy food they'd just eaten. The afternoon passed much like the morning, but with one key difference. Leonardo no longer felt the need to hunch over his desk or avoid eye contact. He walked to the break room with his head held high, exchanged pleasantries with coworkers by the water cooler, and even volunteered to lead a team meeting later in the week. As the workday drew to a close, Leonardo found himself lingering at his desk, not quite ready to leave. The office had become a sort of safe haven, a place where his fears had been proven unfounded. The thought of stepping back out into the real world, where strangers might not be as accepting as his coworkers, was daunting. Heading out soon? Catherine's voice startled him out of his reverie. Oh, yeah, Leonardo said, gathering his things. Just finishing up a few things. Catherine smiled warmly. Well, don't work too late. And seriously, I meant what I said earlier. That outfit really does look great on you. It takes guts to be true to yourself like that. Leonardo felt a lump form in his throat. Thanks, Catherine. That means a lot. As he finally made his way out of the building, Leonardo felt a mix of emotions swirling within him. Relief that the day was over, and he had survived. Pride in himself for taking this step. Gratitude towards his coworkers for their acceptance, or at the very least, their indifference. The subway ride home was a stark contrast to his morning commute. Where before he had felt exposed and vulnerable, now he sat with his back straight, meeting the occasional curious glance with a small smile. Let them look, he thought. This is me. As he unlocked the door to his apartment, Leonardo let out a long, deep breath. He kicked off his shoes, flats, which had been surprisingly comfortable, and padded to the bedroom. Standing before the same mirror he'd faced with such trepidation that morning, he took in his reflection. The person staring back at him looked different, not just because of the blouse and skirt, but because of the confidence in their posture, the light in their eyes. This was Leonardo, unfiltered and unafraid. He changed into comfortable loungewear, but carefully hung up the blouse and skirt. There would be other days to wear them, he decided. Maybe not every day, but whenever he felt like it. The world hadn't ended. Life had gone on, and he had discovered a strength within himself he hadn't known existed. As Leonardo settled onto his couch with a book and a cup of tea, he allowed himself a moment of quiet celebration. Today had been a victory, not just for him, but for authenticity and self-expression everywhere. It was a small step, perhaps, but an important one. His phone buzzed with a text from Mark.
Same time tomorrow for lunch? I'm thinking pizza this time. Also, my wife wants to know where you got those shoes. Said they looked comfy.
Leonardo grinned, typing out a quick reply. As he set his phone down, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. Tomorrow was another day, full of possibilities, and whatever he chose to wear, he knew now that the most important thing was to be true to himself. The rest of the evening passed quietly. Leonardo caught up on some reading, did a bit of laundry, and even managed to squeeze in a quick workout. As he went through these mundane tasks, He found himself periodically touching the fabric of his regular clothes, comparing the feel to the blouse and skirt he'd worn that day. It wasn't that he suddenly disliked his usual attire. Rather, he was beginning to see his wardrobe as a form of self-expression, a way to outwardly reflect his inner self. Some days that might mean jeans and a t-shirt. Other days it might mean a blouse and skirt. The important thing was that he now felt he had the freedom to choose. As he prepared for bed, Leonardo found himself planning outfits for the rest of the week. He pulled open drawers and rifled through his closet, putting together combinations he'd never considered before. A flowy top with his favorite pair of jeans, a cardigan over a sundress. Each ensemble felt like a new facet of his personality, waiting to be explored. He fell asleep that night with a smile on his face, dreaming of a world where everyone felt free to express themselves without fear or judgment. The next morning, Leonardo woke up feeling refreshed and energized. He stood before his closet, considering his options. After a moment's hesitation, he reached for a pair of slacks and a button-up shirt, his usual work attire. But this time, the choice felt different. It wasn't about hiding or conforming. It was simply what he felt like wearing that day. As he got ready for work, Leonardo found himself humming a cheerful tune. The anxiety that had plagued him the previous morning was nowhere to be found. In its place was a sense of excitement about what the day might bring. The commute to work was a completely different experience. Where before he had kept his head down, now Leonardo found himself noticing details he'd never paid attention to before. The intricate patterns on a fellow passenger's scarf, the bold color choices of a street artist's mural. The world seemed brighter, more vibrant somehow. Arriving at the office, Leonardo greeted his coworkers with a confidence he'd never felt before. He complimented Janet from HR on her new haircut, chatted with the IT guys about the latest tech gadgets, and even cracked a joke during the morning team huddle that had everyone in stitches. As he settled into his work, Leonardo realized that his newfound confidence wasn't just affecting his personal interactions. He found himself speaking up more in meetings, offering innovative solutions to problems that had been stumping the team for weeks. His coding was sharper, more creative. It was as if by embracing his true self, he had unlocked a wellspring of potential he never knew he possessed. Lunchtime rolled around, and, true to his word, Mark swung by Leonardo's desk to grab pizza. As they walked to the elevator, Catherine fell into step beside them. "Mind if I join you guys?" she asked. "I've been craving a good slice all week."
"The more the merrier,"
Leonardo replied with a grin. As they sat in the pizzeria, conversation flowed easily. They talked about work, sure, but also about their hopes, their dreams, their fears. Leonardo found himself opening up in a way he never had before, sharing stories from his childhood and his struggles with self-acceptance. "You know," Catherine said thoughtfully, wiping pizza grease from her fingers, "what you did yesterday was really brave, Leonardo. It's inspired me to take some risks of my own." "Oh?" Leonardo leaned forward, intrigued. Catherine nodded. "I've been thinking about going back to school, getting my MBA, but I've always been scared of failing, of not being able to balance work and studies. Seeing you step out of your comfort zone like that, it made me realize that sometimes you just have to take the leap." Mark raised his soda in a mock toast.
"To taking leaps,"
he said solemnly, before breaking into a grin. They clinked their glasses together, laughing. As they made their way back to the office, Leonardo felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the spicy pepperoni he'd eaten. He had always viewed his coworkers as just that. Coworkers. But now, He was beginning to see them as friends, as allies in this journey of self-discovery. The afternoon passed in a blur of productivity. Leonardo found himself in a state of flow, tackling complex coding problems with an ease that surprised even him. Before he knew it, it was time to head home. As he packed up his things, Mr. Thornton stopped by his desk.
"Good work today, Leonardo," he said gruffly. "That solution you proposed in the team meeting? Brilliant stuff. Keep it up."
Leonardo blinked in surprise. Mr. Thornton wasn't known for handing out compliments freely.
"Thank you, sir,"
he managed to reply. Mr. Thornton nodded, then hesitated for a moment.
"And, that outfit yesterday, it took guts. This company values individuality and innovation. Remember that."
With that, he strode off, leaving Leonardo staring after him in amazement. On the subway ride home, Leonardo found himself people-watching again. This time, though, he wasn't comparing himself to others or worrying about fitting in. Instead, he was appreciating the diversity around him. The businessman in his crisp suit, sitting next to the artist with her paint-splattered overalls. The elderly woman with her bright floral dress, chatting animatedly with a teenager sporting vibrant blue hair. Each person was a unique tapestry of experiences, choices, and self-expression, and Leonardo realized that he was just another thread in this vast, beautiful weave of humanity. As he entered his apartment, Leonardo was struck by a sudden urge to redecorate. The space that had once felt like a sanctuary now seemed limiting. He spent the evening rearranging furniture, pulling out old art supplies he'd forgotten about, and even ordering a few new pieces online that better reflected his evolving sense of self. By the time he fell into bed, exhausted but satisfied, his apartment looked like a different place. Bright splashes of color adorned the walls. His bookshelf had been rearranged to showcase his eclectic tastes, and he'd even set up a small meditation corner complete with a yoga mat and some scented candles. As he drifted off to sleep, Leonardo realized that this transformation of his home, of his outlook, of himself, was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, he was excited about what the future might hold. The rest of the week passed in a blur of positive experiences. Each day, Leonardo found himself growing more comfortable in his own skin, more willing to express himself authentically, both in his appearance and his actions. On Wednesday, he wore a mix of traditionally masculine and feminine clothing, tailored trousers paired with a flowy blouse. He received several compliments and even had a heartfelt conversation with a younger coworker who confided that Leonardo's courage had inspired them to be more open about their own gender identity. Thursday saw him in a bold, colorful outfit that he would never have dared to wear before. The vibrant colors seemed to match his mood, and he found himself laughing and joking more than usual, his natural wit shining through now that he wasn't constantly second-guessing himself. By Friday, Leonardo realized that his wardrobe choices were no longer the focus, for himself or for others. What mattered was the confidence he exuded, the ideas he brought to the table, and the connections he was forming with those around him. As he left work that Friday evening, Leonardo felt a sense of accomplishment that went far beyond completing his weekly tasks. He had taken a huge step in his personal journey, faced his fears head-on, and come out stronger on the other side. Walking home, he decided to take a detour through the park. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Families were out enjoying the last bit of daylight. Dogs frolicked in the grass, and couples strolled hand in hand along the winding paths. Leonardo found a quiet bench and sat down, taking in the scene before him. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. In that moment, he felt a profound sense of peace and belonging. He thought back to the nervous, anxious person he'd been just a few days ago, standing in front of his mirror and wondering if he was making a huge mistake. That person seemed like a distant memory now. In its place was someone stronger, more self-assured, more himself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!